Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Now I'm making this video in response to a request I received 14 months ago. Sorry guys. And it was really just asking me whether I had encountered this game, the Central Pacific campaign from the World at War magazine series. And the answer at the time was no. Now, those of you who know me well will know that I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with magazine war games. Sometimes they're absolutely amazing and I love them to bits. Sometimes they're a bit like maybe another one I've covered in one of my other videos and that didn't turn out so great at first. And of course you get everything in between. And it's no great surprise because these things are always done to a tight production schedule. They have to be much shorter in gestation than a decent, massive boxed war game would be. So inevitably you'd expect the quality to be a bit lower across the board. Or would you? Now, I don't have a subscription to World at War, but I have bought a couple of their other titles previously. And the experience there has been a little bit mixed. Some have been good, some have been not so good, but nothing I would describe as terrible. They're a quality production. You get a nice thick magazine with lots of articles in it, and there's often a lot in there that you'd find very interesting. And I always like, because of course you buy the ones that interest you, I always like that they'll have a core article, as many of these magazines do, focusing on the particular subject of the enclosed game. So, this one's got a nice write-up about the Pacific campaign, and both the article and the game are designed by Joseph Miranda. And as a designer, he is another one that I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with, because some of his designs I absolutely adore. He's a genius. Others like Malaya, which was also published under this series, I didn't have such a great time with until I went ahead and fixed it. But the reason people asked me about this game was because it's a little bit different to the fare that you normally get in a magazine game, because normally you either get grand strategy or something a bit tactical, but not often you get the two overlapping so much. And I was told that while this game is mainly strategic, what you get out of it is, yes, grand strategy, but the focus is very interesting. And you get just enough tactical side to add that extra layer of interest. So I was curious. I bought this and I decided to see what all the interest was all about. So, of course, first thing I did was read the magazine, because it is a very interesting and well-produced magazine. And then I got the game out, and it's the usual fare for, World at War / decision games. You get your nice slim rule book. There's not an awful lot to this. I'd say is only about a dozen pages, if that, 25 sections worth of rules. Only a small portion of them are to do with the turn order and initial setup, and most of the rest of it is about explaining the details of how the game works. Now, the interesting thing about this game is it didn't come with any series rules, because it is quite different to a lot of the games that this magazine produces. So now I've said that a few times without really elaborating on what I mean. So let's get right to it, shall we? So I've mentioned the rule book. You get the map with a fair bit of stuff on it, both informational and map graphics. I'll open it up in a bit and give you a sense of, we'll explore it a bit more. And then you have a fair whack of counters, both US obviously and Japanese in the traditional colors they tend to get given in these war games. Now, I probably shouldn't have punched the counters out, because it makes it rather difficult for you guys to see what's going on. So I'll try and do a flyby, and hopefully you can see through the clear plastic. But if you can catch a glimpse of aircraft, some ships and ground units in there, this is very much a game in 3 dimensions. The Japanese, of course, have air units. The combined fleet is lurking over the horizon somewhere, and they've got infantry and ground units of varying quality. The US has the same sort of thing. You've got a lot of fleet units, you've got marine and army units, you've got air groups, and you also have logistical support units with the US. Now, operationally, the US has a bit more detail, because that's going to bring me to the most important point about this game. This is, at the moment, a solitaire game. You play the US forces, and the game system controls the Japanese. But that said, at the level of the counters, the data is pretty much identical. So if I home in on an infantry unit there, you get different ratings in each corner. Now I'm just going to quickly remind myself, because I always get them mixed up. So the top left-hand figure is your, I hope that's going to focus. Are you going to focus? Come on. That's it. So what you see in the top left-hand corner is the anti-aircraft. Nope, I lied, the anti-ground rating. Then you've got the anti-submarine factor, which on an infantry unit is obviously 0. Anti-surface ship factor again, and then finally in top right you've got the anti-aircraft combat factor. So although there's a lot of wasted digits on these counters, it's actually good, because once you memorize what is what on a game counter, they're very quickly referenced, and that feeds quite nicely into the combat system. And these statistics are the same. They're in the same place, whether it's a ground counter, an air counter, or a ship counter. It's really, really good. What do you get on the map? So this is where I'm going to lean back and try not to knock my camera over as I try to talk through this map. I'll try and give you a slow flyby. Well, slowish. There we are. So as you can see, the map is dominated by charts and tables that help explain what everything is, what the details on the map are, your victory points, Japanese targeting priorities. They have to devote a lot of attention to this sort of thing, because of course the Japanese are controlled by the AI. You've got holding boxes for all manner of things, both US and Japanese, air groups, air bases, and so on. And then of course you have the map itself, which covers, in a slightly abstracted way, well, sorry, doing my back out, trying to this. Let's try this again, Andrew. So you have the Pacific in an abstracted way, from the Hawaiian Islands to the Philippines, and it just about includes Iwo Jima as well. So it really is just the Central Pacific campaign. And what I find very interesting about this one is the victory conditions. As you see on most of the boxes in the center, in the territories in the center of the map, you've got spaces for US and Japanese forces to be present, but you don't in the Philippines and you don't in Iwo Jima. And the reason for that is because within the time frame of this game, you're not expected to take those territories. This is really the beginning of the Central Pacific Drive. And if you do get anywhere near Iwo Jima or the Philippines, it's purely in terms of having naval units around them, beating the heck out of the Japanese land bases, and also fighting off the combined fleet if it decides to sortie. In terms of winning the game, you are judged on your performance compared to the historic US forces and US commanders and what they achieved. So there's a bracket in terms of victory points you can earn. a fairly wide one, which is a draw, and they've fixed the historical achievement at 24 points. Now, the top of that level is 29. So it's actually quite hard to do better than a draw. And it looks on the face of it, I've not tried playing this yet, but it looks on the face of it like achieving higher than 29 is going to be a bit of a challenge. So I am looking forward to giving this a go. It does seem a pretty straightforward game, except for one thing. And this is both a really good and, depending on what kind of mind you've got, a really bad thing too. When you get to the US player taking actions, you have a whole plethora of actions that you are able to take. Now, they only take up 2 pages, the last 2 pages on the rules, but they have very, very cleverly linked each action to the sort of US operational headings that you would have had for your different kinds of operations. So, you know, following the way the US staff, US Navy staffs tended to organize themselves, you've got, say, for example, a G1-1 type operation is a request for reinforcements. A G2/2 operation is long-range aerial scouting. A G3N-9 is the use of your amphibious resources to transport fresh ground and air units forward, but not necessarily for an amphibious invasion. That's a reinforcement one. If you want to do something a bit more offensive, you have to select a different one. Now, this is great because it really gets you into that feeling that you're a staff officer poring over the map with all the other staff officers trying to plan the next move. You know, Nimitz on high has given a general directive, and, you know, Halsey/Spruance are sort of endeavoring to carry it out, and you're the guys who've actually got to do the nitty-gritty. So it's great from that perspective. The only worry I have is it'll take me ages to remember what's what. And I think in playing this game, I will need these pages next to me just to remind me what actions I can take every turn. But other than that, the game on the surface does seem to be pretty simple. The turns are very, very basic. Each turn is simply US random event, most of which are beneficial, US actions. You start off with only one action, but as you take more territory and expand your resources and your strategic opportunities, the number of actions you can take goes up. And of course, random events very often add to your available actions. And then that's it for the US turn, for the active player turn. Then the Japanese react, you draw for their random events. You roll and consult tables to see whether they respond, what kind of response they'll give you. Will it just be ground counteroffensives on islands where you've landed troops, or will the combined fleet sortie? One of the Japanese counters is Operation Argo, which is a once per game event where the high seas fleet, what am I saying? The combined fleet will hurl itself at you in some kind of crazy do or die attempts to reverse the situation. So there's lots to keep you guessing. And as the US player, I think the feeling I get is that you're going to be torn because you're going to be aware that the clock is ticking. You really want your forces to be sort of round here as soon as possible. But you have to remember not to overextend yourself. By all means, be bold, because you are getting to that stage in the war where your fleets are beginning to outmatch the Japanese in numbers and in quality. But don't overextend yourself, because the Japanese can appear anywhere within certain limits. They obviously won't turn up off Hawaii again. They tried that once and they decided not to repeat it, despite the admitted success of the first attempt. But certainly when you're if you're bogged down somewhere like Ulithi or Peleliu, they may well appear in your rear trying to make trouble back at Guam or somewhere, or even trying to, ease the pressure on Saipan. You simply don't know till they try it. Although, if you take the intel actions, You don't get to do anything else, but it gives you some sense of what Japanese intentions are in the coming turn, and you can shuffle your forces accordingly, or you can commit to your offensives and hope that you've left enough guys, maybe a bit more than just Taffy 3. Make sure you've left enough guys guarding your rear areas and your supply chains, and garrison those islands with lots of air units. Now, I'm talking strategy here. I'm speculating wildly based on looking at the rules, the units, and the map. But in my next video, I will do a partial playthrough, maybe a 1 or 2 turn sample of play, just to show you guys how the game works. And then I'll finish in the usual format with some final thoughts once we've had a playthrough. But for the moment, I hope that that's of interest, and apologies to those of you who've been waiting to hear what I think of this game. I finally am getting round to it. And I like what I'm seeing so far, and I really look forward to getting stuck in and putting on a playthrough video for you guys, or at least a reduced version thereof. But thank you so much for your interest in this game, and I shall see you all in the next video. Take care now. Bye.